Let's put the 4E's category into story practice. Let's begin with some very simple stories because using the most important stories that you have as exercises aren't an ideal way for you to learn. While story is not a fill in the blank, the Aristotelian structure does help us develop our story. In this longer video, I'm going to use this approach to outline a story for each of our 4E categories: entertainment, education, edification, and evangelism. Quick review. Act 1 starts with a problem or a goal. Act 2 outlines what's being done in the pursuit of the goal or in an attempt to solve the problem. Act 3 explains the final steps to achieve the goal or solve the problem and then tells the outcome. Okay, 4 stories. Let's start with entertainment. There may be a moral to the story where the audience learns or comes to believe something, but our intention behind an entertaining story is to keep the audience engaged, wanting to know what's going to happen on the way to the outcome. Start Act 1 with a person who has a goal or a problem. Carlos has a goal: to surprise his wife with a gift for their wedding anniversary. Well, as much as it's a goal, it's also a problem. The two kind of go hand in hand. If you've ever been married, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is an annual problem for me. Anyway, Act 1, according to Aristotle's model, ends the moment when Carlos decides to solve the problem or pursue the goal. As I give examples, pause the video and try the exercise for yourself. Fill in the blank or use the workbook to come up with an entertaining story of your own. Think of a character. What do they want? What are they going to decide to do? Act 2 is the journey. I like to have 3 points of action during Act 2 to give the story time to develop. Carlos's story would not be entertaining if he just went to the closet and pulled out a gift he had already bought for his wife. There needs to be more to the journey. Here's my Act 2 scenario for Carlos. Goal 1, Carlos has no idea what to get his wife for their anniversary. He asks his kids what they think, but their ideas are either silly or way too expensive. Goal 2, he goes shopping and is overwhelmed by the possibility. He asks the salesperson for help, but to no avail. Goal 3, Carlos turns to the internet for answers. Through a flood of possibilities, a theme emerges. Make it personal. Poor Carlos, in the end, his problem and goal are the same thing: to make his wife happy. Often problems and goals mesh together. It really comes down to the motivation of your character. Don't get bogged down on this distinction. Focus on the motivation of your character and the actions that they take. On a side note, I know we're talking about reality-based filmmaking, but this creative process will help you understand how the real people you're making films about come to decisions and how documentaries fit into Aristotle's classic story structure. What 3 things did your character do to solve the problem? What 3 things did your character do to achieve the goal? Write down 3 active things your character can do. Endings are difficult because there needs to be an epiphany for your character in order to make it entertaining. This is where the moral of the story comes in. The bigger the lesson learned by your character, the more impact your story has. Act 3 is the result of your character's efforts. How did Carlos achieve his goal in Act 3? Carlos made his anniversary personal by surprising his wife with a thoughtfully written card, flowers, and a romantic night at her favorite restaurant, ending with their kids showing up for dessert to celebrate. The resolution shows how the world looks after the climactic solution. In our story, Carlos's wife is happy, he knows it, and we see it. What does your character do in the end to achieve the goal or solve their problem? How has their world changed? Is it for the good or for not? Again, this is dramatic, fictional. These aren't the kinds of stories you probably intended to tell for your organization. But the structure of a fictional and a non-fiction story are the same. They're based on the actions and decisions of the people in the story. In the next example, I'll try to bring it closer to what you might find in a documentary, even if I am making up the scenarios. In these educational videos by the GIL, You're the character experiencing change because of what you do with the information. Your story is fulfilled when you decide to act on the exercises and achieve success in your ability to create a video. Not traditional, but it does fit into Aristotle's 3-act structure. Act 1. Your problem is that you want to know how to tell stories with videos, and you decide to watch this video with the intention of applying the lesson. Act 2 is the journey, the systematic outlay of information and your practical response to the exercises. Act 3, you finishing the exercises, whether you're successful or not. A presentation, lecture, or information video shows or tells an audience something meant to change their life for the better. This series about how to tell stories on video is a perfect example. You're the character in the story experiencing some kind of transformation, or at least I hope you are. How it will conclude is up to you because you're the hero of this tale. Here's another way of looking at it. An educational video is like a 3-act structure. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Remember the light bulb demo? The beginning, or the first act, I introduced myself and identified what you were going to learn. Through the middle, or the second act, I detailed the process and steps of changing a light bulb. In the end, or Act 3, we saw the results, the successfully changed light bulb. Let's take a look at this educational exercise on the chart that we used for the entertainment example. It looks much the same, just that the intentions behind education versus entertainment are different. If you're going to teach something simple, how would you fill out this chart? This is the best approach to conceiving of and writing your script in story form. In our next demo, the 3 acts continue to apply, but they're not as clearly delineated. To edify is to lift up, to celebrate, to observe in a way for us to admire. There's something poetic about this category of media. By poetic, I mean that the meaning and the value of the content is found in the subtext. Poetic art is not expositional. To edify is to entice the viewer with images and sound that's either showing something beautiful or sublime. Observational films, where we simply watch the action take place on screen, happens without a lot of explanation that we might get in an interview, narration, or text. It's considered poetic because it edifies what's taking place on screen. As you see during this example, the content speaks for itself. You look for the nuance to understand what's happening in the reality of these people's lives. Montage, as we discussed in an earlier section, fits into this category. But there's still a beginning, middle, and an end. Something starts the action, giving it context. There are shots that show the process, giving us information. Finally, there are shots that help conclude the video or the sequence. A beginning, a middle, and an end. As I explained in a previous section when we talked about filming an event, a sequence starts with shots that help frame the context of the location before showing the women at the well, posing the question, will they be able to get water? This is the question we would ask in the first act. The second act shows the people retrieving water, shows the process, the details, and the emotion. Finally, with their buckets successfully full, we see them leave in the third act. This scene is like a mini story within a larger story. There's so much to learn about story, we're really just scratching the surface with these videos. So how do we think about telling a story that edifies without using a lot of obvious devices to explain what's happening? Let's use a simple scenario that we're all familiar with, a church service. What are the 3 acts? What's the beginning, the middle, and the end? Act 1, we see, what would we see in the first act? What would you presume to see? Act 2, what are the shots that help explain the process of the service? Act 3, how does the story of the service end? What would we want to see? This is what it takes to plan a poetic story and use media that edifies. In contrast to edify, media that evangelizes tries to prove a thesis or principle using media elements such as visuals, audio, and interview to juxtapose in a way that's as convincing as possible to an audience. Like an essay, a video that evangelizes breaks down very easily into a beginning, middle, and an end. The start is the thesis, the argument that's proposed. This is Act 1. Act 2 lays out the points of the argument. It's the body of the paper. Act 3 tells you where you've arrived, reminding you that you should be convinced of the points that were presented, showing how your point of view has been changed. Let me demonstrate with a short animated video. Have you noticed that some colors on the color spectrum seem to get special treatment no matter where you are in the world? There's a reason why. Not all colors are the same. And the color that is dominant is red. It's the best color, and I'll tell you why. Take note of when and where the color red is used. It's used to get our attention, whether at a stop sign, in traffic, or objects to stand out in public. It's clearly dominant. Royalty have used it for thousands of years in their garb to stand out from commoners. When we think of strong emotions, we refer to the color red. Red is the color of love. Red is the color of passion. When we're mad, we see red. Red is the lifeblood that courses through our veins. The color red goes to the very core of our being. Red is also scientifically proven to be dominant. Neuroscientists have also shown that the color red fires our synapses, creates energy for us to become more active, productive, and intelligent. If you weren't convinced before now, this explanation will change your life, and red will become your favorite color. Look for ways to bring red into your life to become a better human being. Were you convinced? Did I evangelize you into believing that the color red is the best color? Well, I hope not, because I didn't do any research and I'm not sure that all my claims were very accurate. Let's take a look at the 3-act chart. In Act 1, I told you that what I was going to convince you of, framing the video. Then in Act 2, I laid out the 3 points in my argument. In Act 3, I showed how my argument would benefit you with the promise of becoming a better human being. I know these 3E demonstrations haven't been very serious examples, but my purpose was to show how entertaining, educational, edifying, and evangelizing videos work in 3-act structure. It'll be up to you to fill in the blanks with meaningful content. In the final video on story, I want to show you a template that I use for scripting the story on the page. Each of these GIL videos, I use this template both to help with the audio that I wanted to say and the visuals that I intended to use. This script will be the most effective tool for you to use in reference when it comes time for you to shoot.